All right, Live Your Legend crew. So we have someone super fun to talk with today. This is Kelly Stoetzel. She works with the TED organization, TED.com, the group that we share videos about every single day, it seems like. And there's been over, what, 1 billion videos watched so far through TED. And we're going to get into what all that's about. But she is the content director. And I feel like that's a very understated title because it sounds like she's responsible really for picking the main stage speakers every year, and which seems like an unbelievably big job, but also a powerful and fun kind of dream career that, as far as I'm concerned. So I'm excited to get into all that. She's involved in TED Youth and TED Active, all these things that we're going to dive deep into, but she just lives this stuff. So I'm looking forward to this, Kelly. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to it too.
Awesome. Well, I love your background, and your ideas are being inspired as I look at your shelves and your art pieces and all that. So it's fun to see. I know Kelly just gave me, before we got on this, a tour of her house and all these different art pieces that her and her husband have collected or created. And so she has a number of different passions we'll probably dive into. But let's get started. Maybe we could just start with TED, just to bring everyone to the same page. I mean, TED has been such a big part of my life and our community at Live Your Legend. I mean, I got the chance to give a TEDx talk a couple years ago that totally transformed the way that we could share our ideas with people in our communities around the world. But for you, I feel like it's something even deeper because you live it every day. So can you just share a little bit about what the TED Why is? I say why because I think of Simon Sinek, and
yeah, of course.
One of the top TED Talks, it was a TEDx talk, is Simon's talk. I probably watched it 15 times, and we built Live Your Legend based on that. So tell me, how do you see the TED Why and kind of why it gets so exciting for you?
Well, I just think that there are so many people out in the world that are doing incredible work, thinking about things in new ways, and they're all around us. So we really, our goal is to help people spread good ideas, and so through the website, and gathering the content at the conferences, and also through the TEDx initiative where people can hold their own TED-like event all over the world. They're able to bubble up local people doing really interesting things that we may never have found. And so we all just really get excited by and motivated by just hearing about innovation and new ways of thinking.
Oh, well, I bet a lot of people had the same experience. I thought TED was mainly the talks, the ideas, some of the events around the world. But when I went to TED Active and met you in person and saw how real that was in Whistler, Canada this year, and the energy, the community you guys have created all over the planet I think there's thousands of TEDx groups now, right?
Yeah. There have been I might have this number wrong, so maybe I shouldn't even say it, but I think it's about 9,000 TEDx's have happened around the world. Yeah. There are usually at least 7 or 8 happening on any given day somewhere in the world.
Oh my God. I can see the pride as you say that, because that is.
Well, it's just exciting. I don't even know if it's pride. It's more just like, wow, I think it's just amazing to think about people and they're from like the Sydney Opera House to small towns, or to even, TEDx Kibera is one that I've gotten to know some of the organizers. It's the largest slum in Kenya, and they have 7 different TEDx's that happen there. And, it's just, and there's some that are small in a coffee house and some that are huge. It's just so exciting because these people don't get financial reward for doing these events. They do it because they are purely excited to spread knowledge.
Yeah, God, that goes to show you the power of that common why. Everyone shares that vision, and all this stuff is free. I mean, yeah, they don't get paid or anything to do it, but also we like to consume it and don't have to pay anything. It's too good to be true is what it seems like, but I know it's not because I've seen it and see what it's like. But well, let's get into a little bit about your role, because you have.
Okay.
I mean, we like to document people that are living inspiring lives and doing really what they consider their dream career, and how that path led to that spot. Because it's a very hard to identify path. Like Steve Jobs says, the dots don't connect going forward, they only connect going backwards. And,
yes.
So I know yours started with, there's camp counselor involved, there's contemporary art, can we hear how that came together?
Sure. Well, my first job was as a camp counselor, and as I look back, it was one of the most significant I ever had. And so then my around the time I was, in fact, a camp counselor, my dad started attending TED, and he would come home from it, and it was simply an annual conference. Then the first year of the conference was 1984, as you know, you were just there for our 30-year anniversary, and so he would come home and he would like talk about this thing, and we just didn't understand it, and we used to tease him about it, but as a camp counselor, I also felt like, that was kind of a luxurious job, and that I needed to, get internships and do things to build my resume. So I would do that too. And I, like do data entry for a magazine, and, worked at a large corporation one summer, and, for part of the summer, and like took my little time to be a camp counselor too. Then I went on, I worked in the art world for a little while because art is a real passion of mine. Then I got to a point in that career where I needed to, the gallery I worked for moved away, and I was living in Los Angeles at the time and needed to get another job. And I had a friend who worked for a litigation consulting firm who hired me, and I ended up kind of growing within that place. And it's kind of a weird job, and I don't really look at it as the best time in my life, but I did get a big skill there in retrospect. And what I did there was produce multimedia presentations of demonstrative evidence for trial. So I was taking complex information and distilling it visually for people to, consume in a very clear way. So it helped me with storytelling, and it helped me with, think about presentations a lot. It wasn't very much fun, however. And then I went sort of back into the art world, and a good friend of mine who goes to TED too, started a gallery, and I helped her sort of get that started for a while. And then I started going to TED at that time too, and as an attendee. And so I got to know Chris Anderson, who is now my boss, who owns TED. And when he bought it, ran it from California. I was living in New York. We would have coffee sometimes when he came to New York. And one time he came and said, "I'm going to move the office to New York." And I immediately said, "What are you going to do about staff?" And he said, "I'm not bringing anyone." And I said, "I would love to work for you." So that was before we had the talks online. That was in 2004. I think I probably got the job because I had sent him some good speaker recommendations over the year. I'm not sure he ever even saw my resume. So I got very lucky just by, and again, that was like doing something that I loved. I loved going to the TED conference. And so I got to know the guy who ran it, and, connected with him and sent him recommendations, and did what I love to do anyway, which I think that's what led to what I get to do now.
Wow. So just from showing up to the things that were exciting, i.e. the TED conference, and then the relationship with Chris just kind of started just kind of out of nowhere, and then one to the next, huh? Yeah, yeah. And I mean, you don't just work with TED now. I mean, TED is a lot of things, but I mean, the core of it is these big events, the big speakers, and the main stage. I mean, I feel like TED is it's the ultimate stage of possibility. You guys can. It's a kind of a scary power, maybe, if you think of it in a certain way. That you put someone on a stage and they have an idea, it can spread like wildfire, and it has with a lot of people. And I mean, I go back to Simon Sinek just because his was at some random Puget Sound, I think, TEDx, with a few people, and now it's gone across the planet, helped so many people. But your role, so are you actually in charge of figuring out who those speakers are going to be? Is that?
Well, it's not just me, but I do oversee the curation process, and there are others on the team and all of that. But definitely, I lead the team that does it, and it's, and I, work really closely with Chris on it too. And it is really incredible. I mean, there's, and a lot of work, it is sort of a responsibility. And in some ways, it's important to be a little scared about it, because it means that we need to be skeptical. We need to ask questions. We need to make sure someone is is the best person to give the talk they're going to give. So we always, it means we ask around, and we thankfully have developed over the years a really wonderful network of people we can check in with. And we also have a fantastic group of people that watch talks online or that come to the conferences that send us email recommendations too. So that's something we are always digging into, but we do a lot of research to make sure that we get it as right as we possibly can.
I mean, you guys must be inundated with ideas or requests. I mean, if people are emailing you and you have, I don't know how many millions are constantly consuming this stuff, but so how do you cut through all that, because to figure out up from down with somebody putting it on stage is a heck of a task. And it's also, I get nervous just watching someone get on the main TED stage. I remember my experience at the TEDx in San Francisco was like, oh my God, it just felt on this totally different level. You guys have created this crazy stage experience, but it causes people to show up. So I'm curious, how do you filter that?
Well, as far as figuring out who we're going to invite to speak, that really has to do with the theme. It has to do with, a balance of the right speakers in the program. We get about probably 10,000 recommendations for speakers a year. And then that's not the only way we find speakers, of course, too. We are out there reading everything, listening to speakers ourselves, asking people, that we know who is the best person to speak on this topic. And, also knowing that we can't have, 4 speakers probably on nanotechnology, let's say, within a program. We need to really keep a diverse program. And so we just dive into it and learn a lot all the time.
Yeah. Wow.
And then we work with the speakers to help them, really clearly share their stories.
Got it. So once you've identified one, they've, I guess, decided on it, then I'm guessing there's a whole training program, right? That's pretty intensive that they go through, or does it depend on where they're starting?
Kind of. It's it definitely varies by person, and there is no formula, absolutely no formula that makes a TED Talk work. Yeah. I think, what we typically do is actually, in most cases, rather than just inviting someone and saying, hey, we'd love to have you come and speak, we'll say, we'd love to have a conversation with you and explore the possibility of a talk. Mm-hmm. So that way we can make sure that the content is likely to work and that we're going to get to a place that we agree on and that we're really clear on what they want from their stage time as well. And then, and that's going to be a fit. And then we, ask for talking points from them. We'll do some work over email and then have another phone call or two, and we do Skype rehearsals in advance, and they rehearse on site as well.
Yeah, it makes me nervous thinking about it.
Good. That's all to kind of, people definitely do still get nervous on the stage, but the thing is that I think is really important is creating just a warm, receptive audience, because that makes it so much easier. And in most cases, speakers tell me that they get on the stage and about 2 minutes in, they go, oh, you know what? I worried about this too much. Because it's also fun, and it should be fun. It's people sharing the things that they love and that they also are uniquely qualified, to share.
Right.
The speaker is usually the one who knows the most about whatever it is they're saying.
Right. That's pretty incredible. Right. And I guess so in terms of the audience, you guys have cultivated that audience, so it allows them when they show up to have people who aren't skeptical as much as they are like, hey, I can't wait to hear, and I'm excited, and so they're engaged from the start, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure that takes the pressure off, huh? Or some of the pressure off.
Yeah. I think it does, and I think we also really encourage speakers to spend time in the community as much as possible, especially speakers who are speaking later in the program, to just meet as many people as they possibly can, so that eye contact is a really, 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 really important thing in giving a talk. And it's even better when you can look out in the room and go, oh, there's that guy I had a nice conversation with half an hour ago. And you kind of look around and you see people who are new friends, and they also tend to give you a little bit of warmer, even visual feedback, which is always helpful.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I didn't even think about getting into kind of the dealing with stage fright topic, but you opened it up. This is perfect. So, so I feel like a lot of people you talk to, even the people who talk a lot, still say they'll get nervous when they get on stage because they know it's a big responsibility. And whether it's a TED stage or any stage, which I think is a good thing to keep in mind. If you can get lazy if it stops feeling like you have the energy and the excitement. But so that's one big thing. You would, let's say for stage fright, for example, you would meet some people in advance and just feel like you know the audience a little bit better, so it feels a little bit warmer.
And then Amy Cuddy has a great talk on TED.com about body language and making yourself big before you go out there.
Right,
and that has really helped people. A lot of speakers have told me that watching that talk really made a big difference for them.
Wow.
But that's kind of a good thing too.
We have shared that through a couple of our different communities, and we actually had an event. We have events around the world that Live Your Legend gatherings that happen each month, and one group sent a picture and then a video of them all power posing.
I love that.
It was so cool, and that talk had nothing to do with the event, but they used it as their fuel. So, so eye contact. I feel like it's easy in a big audience to just kind of look around at the group, but you're talking like let's connect real with a handful of people.
I think really thinking of it, there's a thing, and I'm going to try to explain this in a way that makes sense, but I explain it to speakers a lot. Like when, it's really easy, and I think it's most people's natural tendency when they're invited to speak somewhere to think about, okay, this is an opportunity for me. What is it that I want to share with the audience? And that is to some degree important because you want to be communicating from a place where you're passionate about. But the question to really ask is let me learn about my audience first. And what is this audience going to get the most out of from me? What can I do for the audience? And that just frames it up a little bit differently. And then when you get up there as a speaker, it's a little bit more like a conversation because you're pretty sure you're providing them something that's going to be useful that they can sort of take away and work with. And you're also framing it up as though it's about them and not you. And that even goes into like when you're thinking about what visuals you would bring on stage, what slides or props or whatever, rather than doing things that help you along, like a bullet pointed slide that's like your own outline so you don't have to stand there with note cards. It's stuff that supplements what you're saying, that just adds to what you're saying. It's an opportunity to get more content in a short amount of time, but what I think it should always be, every single thing you do, as a speaker, for the audience.
Oh, I love
and
that.
I always say too, we say there is nothing wrong with note cards. Like that is human, to have note cards and still,
I figured there was some no note card rule that was kind of in the TED fine print. But.
No, not at all. We just, we did this talent search a couple years ago where we went to 14 countries, and in 3 months we heard from 293 speakers. And it turned out to be this excellent lab for testing all sorts of different theories and trying new things. And we'd learn something, and then we'd go do an event in a new place. And we had a day in every place that we went of rehearsals with the speakers, and then the event would be the next day. And so we could do things like, that was, excuse me, we really started to notice stuff like, hey, note cards aren't that bad, but a confidence monitor with notes on it is more distracting for the speaker, and that causes disconnection. And so that's something we don't use a lot of, but sometimes speakers do feel like the only way they'll be comfortable is that, and then respect. I mean, we'll do what it takes to make the speaker feel most comfortable.
It's wild how simple yet totally profound it is to stop thinking about it being about you. Even though you're on this stage, everyone is looking at you. The world could be looking at you soon if it goes well. But forget all that and how are we going to most help the people that are there? It's like when you hear it, it's like, well, of course. But I feel like very few people frame it like that because they get so caught up in their own world and how nervous maybe they are, how big of a deal it is.
I think that's true, and I think it takes away the stage fright in some ways. And I MC a lot of events, and for me as a host, the only reason that I can do my job, I'm actually sort of an introvert, and the thought of standing on a stage, having people look at me, and if I thought of it in any way as about myself, I would never be able to do it, and I'd also be terrible at it, and I'd freak out and have a panic attack. But I don't get stressed about it because I think of it and over time I've really learned to do this more and more, but I think of it as my job is to make these people have a really great experience. It's not about me, and nobody else is probably thinking about me at all. They're just thinking about what information is coming out of my mouth, or that I'm setting the stage a clean, warm slate for the next speaker or whatever. It's a job. It's a service, not about. And the same is for being a speaker. I feel like it's that speaker is there to communicate information, but people aren't really judging the person that's up there. You know?
Yeah, that's so true. You're judging yourself more than anybody. That's for sure.
Yes.
It's funny you talk about the panic attack or whatever. Seeing you on stage live at TED Active, and you and Reeves are so fluid and just it's a party. It seems like you guys are just hanging out, just as the two of you having fun with a group, which is I guess maybe what you mean is just keep it.
Yeah, that's what it feels like.
Casual.
That's actually what it is, and that's real, you know. And and it's real because that's the way that we think of it, you know.
Right. I can imagine how relevant this is for a group of like a speaking organization like TED. You find people from all over the place, right? You have nano technologists, scientists, all these black hole experts, whatever. And for them, more than anyone, I feel like it's even more important to like, okay, what are you going to actually get the audience to take away? Because none of them are going to understand actually what a black hole is, right? Unless you really simplify it. And I know your audience is very smart, but still, I imagine it's even more of a focus for you guys since you have such a diverse topic set.
Yeah. And it also means in some cases we really think about, you know, how you can supplement well with visuals, slides, animations, or whatever, because there are some complex topics, and the longest TED Talk is 18 minutes, and that is really the length of time we give speakers is not for how much content that they have in their talk. I mean, how much or how important they are or whatever. It's about how long it takes to explain their topic.
Yeah.
You know, how long it truly takes to do it without adding a lot of filler.
Got it.
You know, so the 18-minute talks are for the more complex.
Well, filler is pretty much impossible when you have that countdown timer in your
face. Exactly.
Okay, so let's say we have a lot of people in our audience that their big goal or dream is to speak at a TEDx event. Well, I guess the big dream is to speak at a TED event, but that obviously is unbelievable needle in a haystack type thing. But I'd rather shoot for like the TED stage preparation. So if someone, let's say, was going to do their best to prepare for a talk like that, is there like an 80-20 set of like maybe like 2 or 3 or something guidelines of kind of what to do and maybe also what not to do to present something that's TED worthy?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, definitely one of those things is think about your audience, know who your audience is going to be, and think about giving the talk for them. I think people prepare a lot of different ways, and there is no one way that's right. I think it's really important to think about what works for you as a speaker. Some speakers do really well thinking in bullet points. Some speakers do really well thinking about transitions between topics. And then there are some that memorize. And memorization can be amazing. And some of the best TED Talks have been memorized, but it's also a challenging way to go because you have to memorize. You have to go so far. And some people say memorized talks feel over-rehearsed. And it's actually when they're under-rehearsed that they seem that way. If you get only to the point that you go, yeah, I've got this down, I know the words, that's not enough. As Reeves, my co-host, who has always said, what he does, he's a spoken word poet, and when he learns what he's going to say, he doesn't consider it memorized until he can do it like 3 times with the television on full blast, with some confusing show on, with a bunch of talking heads, standing on one foot. And I know somebody else who feels that way, but just does it walking backwards. Has to be able to give the talk 2 or 3 times walking backwards. And so it's like when you've got things that are using different part of your brain, then if you know it that well, you can put the soul back into it and be present as you're giving it and feel the emotions that you're saying and, get the excitement back in your words and all of that.
Right. Because it sounds like it comes deeply back to passion and being like, be able to feel that energy from the person on stage, right? That this is not just their wheelhouse, but like their baby. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And another place that I think we work with speakers on a lot is, it's really natural to want to communicate a lot. When you get up there, you think this is my chance, and I want to communicate all this stuff about my work. And it's really hard though to take all that in for an audience member. So it's important to focus on one key idea and everything that it takes to sort of support that when you're up there.
Got it. So simplify and focus.
Exactly.
And what about, in terms of the actual idea, what makes an idea TED worthy? I know that's a big question, but is it uniqueness or is it, what?
It is a big question. I think, for one thing, it's really important that the speaker is uniquely qualified to speak about that topic. So that matters. And it's something, I would say a lot of it then too is, the speaker would need to be passionate, but I guess the idea is usually something that is new and innovative, just happening, just about to happen, or it could be a new way of thinking about something that currently exists, a new lens on something.
Right. Okay. So there's kind of a few different buckets it could fall into.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's super helpful to kind of distill it down. So what about, you already talked to, I was curious about some things maybe not to do, or maybe one thing not to do. You did talk about under preparing, and you talked about talking about too many ideas. Is there kind of one thing you've noticed to be like the thing that really cuts people off at the knees in terms of like them trying to get a story across, but they don't?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I sort of think that it's really, if you're working with a speaker, or what I would say too for people who are giving talks is to rehearse the talk in front of friends and as many other people as you sort of can, and they'll help you identify this stuff, because usually when people give you feedback, their gut instinct on it's right. It doesn't take, in most cases, a highly qualified, highly experienced speaker coach to give feedback that works. My 10-year-old daughter is amazing at it, and it's just because she's like, I don't understand what you said.
Yeah.
And that matters. But I think, so it kind of varies based on the person. But one thing that I do think that, some people have a tendency to do, and it can be people that don't have huge egos, but it comes across as though you have a huge ego, which really just distances the audience. And it's how many times you say I in the talk. It's fine to say it, because you are usually talking about yourself and your work and all that. But if you say too much, like, well, I did this and then I did that and I do it this way and then my work, blah, blah, blah. It sort of comes across as though it's all about you and not the idea or the content.
I love that. That is another super simple thing that changes the whole trajectory of a talk, I feel like. And the focus, then it puts the focus back on the audience, right?
Yeah.
So last thing about the talks, I know there's thousands and thousands of TEDx talks. I think, what is it, something like 40,000 or something. I don't know how many right now, but a number of them end up on, not a number of them, but some of them end up on TED.com. What's that process like? How do you, because I feel like that's a good, at least, goal to shoot for if you're giving a talk, right? Who knows if it'll happen, but might as well like have that. So is there, I'm sure it's not a specific formula, but I don't know. I'm just curious.
Well, there's not a formula for anything we do. I mean,
right.
but so all those kind of things to do and things to don't do, those are things we look for. And, when we're reviewing the material that goes up, another thing I think, that's important is for speakers to make sure that every moment of the talk is filled with substantial content and not filler and not, and that it's just all kind of meaty in a way. But then, there's another part of this too for, that's important to think about, for that matters to TEDx organizers. And that is, that we look for, and that's the quality of the footage as well. It needs to have, enough lighting and clear audio. And then that's really important. And audio is kind of the one thing you really can't go back and fix. Especially, I mean, you can do some things if the lighting's dark, but we do edit the talks, which is good to know also for speakers speaking at TED or TEDx, that if you mess up or the slides get out of sync or whatever, there's that can get fixed in later on. But unless it's an audio issue, and for audio issues, it's like we've got to start over.
Wow. So I mean, you guys could potentially get a talk that's like, wow, this should be, this is like a TED.com worthy talk, but the audio and video aren't great. We just can't do it.
Yeah, but what we do is that when we watch those talks, we'll flag ones that are like that. And if it's not going to work, the footage that we had, and we love the speaker, they might get an invitation to speak at TED or at a salon in our office or something like that, because we don't want to, often to miss the opportunity to, record it.
Right. Yeah. I like that. Okay. So I guess that's a good reminder for TEDx organizers too, like to have good audiovisual type stuff, just because they all want to get their talks up on the spotlight, I'm sure too. So,
right.
Awesome. Well, this is so super useful for like giving a talk. Love it. I'm going to be rewatching this and taking all kinds of notes, but shifting gears to what I think is your deep passion and like in source and core, this TED Youth topic. Can we get into that a little bit? Can you tell us about TED Youth?
I love it. Yeah, so TED Youth is it'll be in its 4th year, and it is going to be held in New York City, and it's part of really a larger event, which is TEDx Youth Day. So TEDx Youth Day, TEDx's are independently organized TED events that we license to people who don't have a commercial, political, or religious agenda, basically, and they get a free license. And so on this day, it's November. It's actually 2 days, but it's called TEDx Youth Day. Okay. It's November 15th and 16th, 2014, coming up. Over 100 people will hold events for young people around the world, and we have our own. And a lot of these events that happen around the world will watch. Ours is going to be in New York City. We'll have about 30 speakers, and they'll all give it's a little bit of a different format than a TED Talk, although many of them have gone on TED.com. They're more like lessons, and nothing is longer than 9 minutes, so it's a really fast-paced, rich day, and we have incredible kids in the audience. It's free to attend, and we try to engage the kids as much as we possibly can. So we have a kid shadowing every adult job. They're middle school and high school age kids, so there's a big range of ages. Kids shadow every single adult job. Young people will show up having no idea that they're going to introduce a speaker that day, and then they introduce a speaker that day, and it's really cool. But the thing that I most love about it is that, you'll see when speakers give talks for adults, and that's so much of what TED does and what it has historically been. Adults can get inspired to do something a little bit differently, but when they give talks for kids, like, it can actually change their whole lives. And every single TED Youth, I have absolutely seen that happen for kids. And we've gotten notes, from young people, 6 months or a year later saying, I went to college because of this, or I started taking, a different class because of this, and I love it, and now I know I want to be an entomologist, or something like that. Like, you can see them, you can actually see this moment that something really shifts for them, and they realize that something's possible that they didn't think was an option for them before.
Wow, and you can just feel it as you explain it, and it gives me chills, because I think about that a lot of people at Live Your Legend, they'll either they have kids or they're younger, but also people, let's say they're 40, 50, or 60, thinking, okay, I took this path that wasn't right for all the reasons that weren't me, because society suggested this or whatever, and all of a sudden you're way over here and you got to shift over here. That process is very, very challenging and can feel impossible. It's not impossible, but it feels tough. If you just shift it like this and you just go here from the start, just think of the angst you are saving so many people, and the possibility you're creating for the planet when you do that. So it's so 80-20.
It's true. Helping them, giving them an opportunity, or they're getting an opportunity to sort of maybe find their thing earlier on. Yeah. For me, it's like you said, I in my own life, I connect the dots in reverse, but I definitely had times where I was way off track and doing something that, didn't really make me happy. I was able to take something I learned from that and become, find myself in a happy role later on. But I always thought it was so incredible when I would meet people that always knew what they wanted to do and then did it. And then were always happy with their work and,
right.
And their life.
Just didn't waste a moment. So is there a piece of advice you have related to that for someone, let's say, who's trying to sort out one option or the other, and what kind of how to help make that decision?
Yeah, I would say the big lesson I learned, sort of struggling through, getting to the place where I found I was loving all that I did, was that just everything that I did that I loved, whether it was recreational or professional, all that was all what led me. That's all the stuff that gave me skills I need in my job. I feel like if I only stuck with doing things that really excited me, that would have, that probably would have still led me here, but maybe sooner, Mm-hmm. And I think doing what you love just gives you skill and pleasure, and, it's life. It's great to be happy with what you're doing and constantly challenged by something that excites you.
Yeah, God, and you're definitely preaching the message here for sure. And this is something that it's tough, because you can a lot of times feel like, well, for instance, camp counselor. you have to deal with some people wondering like, well, what is she doing? Why isn't she doing something more like useful or whatever? And it takes, I mean, you have to hear it from enough people who've been there, like, you know, like yourself and other people we talk to, as someone that's young, to think about, okay, yeah, I'm going to stick with that because that is where I'm excited. That is where I can help people. It's amazing to have that conviction. So I appreciate you sharing that with us.
Well, it's true. And you know, with the camp counselor thing, like if you think about it, you break down that job. If you ever need somebody to manage something, asking, you know, if something ever went wrong in the room at TED Active, I would probably say, how many former camp counselors do we have in the house? You know? Because that, you know, managing a group of 29-year-olds is harder than a lot of work management jobs.
Right.
And if you can get that skill ingrained in your mind early on, then you know, it'll take you far.
I couldn't imagine managing a group like that. But yeah, what a great barometer. How many camp counselors? That's perfect. Because the skills that you get from things aren't necessarily as obvious when you're signing up. You probably didn't sign up to be a camp counselor because you wanted to learn X, Y, and Z. It was like, no, let's just do this. This is cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Your advice reminds me of Warren Buffett's. I don't know if you've heard this before, but taking a job to build a resume is just like saving up sex for old age. Have you ever heard that before? It's incredible. It just totally like distills it down. Like, stop making these decisions for other people and do them for what excites you and how you can add value. So anyway, it kept bouncing in my head this whole time we've been having this conversation.
I think it's great.
So I guess two quick final things. One is if someone wants to support and be a part of TED Youth, how can we do that? How can we give you guys
so we will have more details up on the TED website coming soon, probably in the next couple of months. But one thing is that the live stream of TED Youth will be open free to the world. So anybody from anywhere can watch it, and we hope that lots and lots of people will. If you're in the New York City area, we will also have information on there before too terribly long, but probably late summer, about applying to come. We ask kids to apply, but it's free. But we just are really looking for people who are very excited to be there and participate. And then also, if you are interested in organizing a TEDx event in your community around TEDx Youth Day, on the TEDx page, there are instructions for, you know, how to organize a TEDx youth event.
Awesome. Okay, cool. We'll share all that with everybody and get the word out, because this is near and dear to our hearts for sure. And I know you have to go at you have a very strict cutoff, because why? Can you please tell us?
Because my 10-year-old daughter is a TEDx organizer, and she's got her third TEDx tomorrow, and so I'm headed over to her school for speaker rehearsals to kind of help them out, just from a mom perspective. She's the one who gives the feedback and all that. It's true. Wow. She and her co-host and co-organizer really run the show. It's pretty cool.
That is nuts. So 3 TEDx's at 10 years old. This new generation, thanks to what you're doing and thanks to what TED's doing, I think has unbelievable potential, despite some issues that might happen with the formal education system. So I'm encouraged by the different ad hoc possibilities there to build that self-guided education. So last super quick question, if it might be a little bit of a zinger for you, but if you were going to stand on the main stage and give a talk, do you have an idea? Do you have a talk that you deliver?
Well, I don't know. I mean, people ask me that a lot, and it's so hard. And, you know, I could do like the obvious how to give a talk kind of thing or whatever. But I'm left-handed. My husband's left-handed. My daughter's left-handed. So I feel like if I were given the opportunity, I might do a ton of research on left-handedness. Not that there's plenty of scientific research out there, but what the practice of it, like, is kind of interesting. I'd just give a short talk, a 3-minute talk on, design for people with both hands, because there's a lot of stuff designed for people with that are right-handed. So this would be like a fun, playful talk, 3 minutes. It would be short, like kind of audience talk.
Right.
You know, it's just something I've been thinking about lately.
It's not something I've thought about much, but I think
people are right-handed design, and people are right-handed bias, and I am kind of interested in, having people think about the left hand.
You got to change that. Well, it's a fun question for anyone listening. Think about if you were asked to step on the TED stage, what would you say? I think it helps to distill down, like, what do you really care about and what difference do you want to make? So I don't know, I'm always curious to hear what people say, especially you.
That's not probably like the difference I'd want to, that's not my hardcore talk.
Well,
that's, you know.
But right, you're having fun, 3-minute talk, but in general, it's just a fun
3-minute talk. I'd lighten up the program.
I love it. Well, awesome, Kelly. This is amazing. You, I'm sure, don't give yourself enough credit for the ripple that you guys have set throughout, really, I mean, the whole world. And it's affected me and so many people in our community, and it's just nuts. So I'm grateful. I'm incredibly grateful. So thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank you so much for having me.
Indeed. Well, enjoy your TEDx prep with your daughter, and be proud.
Thank you so much, Scott.
All right. Thanks, Kelly.